Yeah, I've all the way back to when, I was with Coach Reed back in Philadelphia. You always script, whether you call them the openers, first 15. And normally what you're trying to do is see what defenses will do and run plays that you think are going to work and gain yards, of course. And then typically the openers, you script your first and second down calls, but if you get into a third down, you jump off it and so on and so forth. But, it's kind of the plays that kind of get you through the first quarter so you can kind of pick and prod and see what the defense is doing. But, it's not always a hard and fast deal. Things change. You might be faced with something the defense is doing drastically, and then you just move on from there.
Second one is, what kind of month did Drew Lock have in terms of his progress?
I think he's made great progress. Running parallel with being young and being a second-year player was learning a new offense, getting used to a lot of new skill players. When you have, 3 new receivers in there working that are rookies, and really for the most part only 2, with Hamler being out, along with just getting used to how we operate. And the really good thing for us in the competitive situations is, our defense is challenging. And so to be challenged in practice settings is huge, especially missing the preseason games.
Next up, Mike Kliss.
Yes, Coach, I was just wondering your reaction to when Courtland went down and it looked like he was in pain.
Well, I mean, anytime, a player needs assistance on the field, you're concerned as a coach. And we'll just have to see where that goes. He's a tough player. And, I think Coach will talk to you about, his injury and where it goes. But you never want to see a player get hurt, especially in practice, and especially in a non-competitive situation like it was.
Next up, Eric DeWallet.
Coach, a couple for you. One, how prepared do you think Jerry Jeudy is if Courtland can't go this week to take on that added responsibility? And then secondly, Vic said you were going to call games from the field. Is that something you're just more comfortable with after being a head coach the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, with regard to Jerry Jeudy, I mean, he was going to be part of the plan anyways. And anytime, let's say Courtland doesn't make it for whatever reason, then it's, the whole group has got to kind of share the load. I mean, that's the way it's always been and always will be. These kind of things are our game, and so they got to be ready to go, and I think we're preparing him to play anyway, so he may just have to take a few more snaps. Other guys will fill in as well. As far as calling the game from the field, I think I've done it both ways. I like being on the field with the quarterback, and I think it's an easier transition sending it into play as well. There's nothing like the personal interaction, and we have things that we intend to run, and there's a lot of coaches that call it from the field, and I actually have a good view of it, and I've kind of trained myself to see a great deal from the sideline.
Next up, Jeff Leipold.
Pat, I know you don't always get a lot from preseason games that you can take in terms of scouting defenses, but how nimble do you think you're going to have to be early in the game Monday, just because you don't really have anything to work off of other than what you know of their defense and what they did last season?
Well, I think defensively they got to feel pretty good about what they did last year. Almost played in a Super Bowl, and ended up ultimately losing to the team that won the Super Bowl. So they got really fine players. They got a really solid scheme in all areas, and then they've obviously added a dynamic player in Jadeveon Clowney. So, the base of what they're going to do, I think is a matter of record. But there's always things that nobody has seen in the first game, even if you played preseason games. Through the years, Clowney's been used different ways, stand up, walk around, so we have to scout those things, and we typically would do that even if we even when we played games prior to having preseason games, because not everybody shows what they're going to do anyways.
Next up, Troy Rank. Troy, if we lose you, we'll go to Arnie next, please.
Hey, Pat, you've got a bunch of rookies and a bunch of second-year players, and I'm wondering, how do you maximize that talent, that speed, and then minimize the inexperience factor? And then secondly, with Vaughn out, do you have to open things up a little bit more and look at maybe taking more chances or anything?
Yeah, I don't know. First of all, I think, I'm sort of used to working with a young roster. My last 2 years, our roster kind of was as young as this one. And I think this, at some point, the young players, are drafted for a reason. You got to get them in there. You got to get them going. And a lot of these guys have played at a very high level. And so you just have to get them going. That's just the reality of it. There's really not tolerance for mistakes, but, guys can't play anxious. They got to go out and play fast. And I think that's the challenge, to get them out there and let them do it. And not only do it, but compete at a high level and put a winning performance on tape. And then the second part of your question was?
There's a notion with Von Miller out that, instead of playing for lower scores, you might have to open things up and take more chances.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I think opening up and taking chances are two different concepts. I think it's just like everybody. There's probably 50 different versions of what people think the West Coast offense is. So, I think it's important that we're aggressive. I think it's important that we maintain some form of balance, whatever that is that week. There's some games when it's better to run the ball. We like plays that make yards and then eventually get in the end zone. So we want to run those plays, whether it's a run or a pass. And I think that's the key.
Guys, we got time for a few more. Next up, Nick Kosmider.
Yeah, Pat, I'm just curious your impressions of Tyree Cleveland and the camp that he had to put himself in position to make the 53.
Yeah, I'm super fond of Tyree because he's really into it. He's big. He's physical. He's at least in camp, and then I know through his college days, he's had an impact on special teams, which kind of gives him a niche right away. And then if you have a receiving core that's dealing with some injuries, he's a guy that can play, on the outside, either X or Z. And I've really been impressed with his attention to detail, his toughness, and obviously toughness, and then his ability to play the position. And, obviously toughness is demanded in our game.
Last two, Troy and then Zach. Go ahead, Troy.
Coach, I apologize. My volume was temperamental operator error here. But on
You're
the
outside. It looks like you're outside. You got a wind issue.
Yeah, I'm right outside your practice field here. It's beautiful today.
Yeah.
What is it when you look at Melvin and Phillip? I know that they're co-starters. How important is the running game in a game like this? With your first time with Drew, he's a first-year full-time starter. How do you assess the importance of the running game, and how do you divide these? How do these two complement each other in week one in Phillip and Melvin?
Well, it's a matter of record, how similar and maybe how different Phillip and Mel are. They're two outstanding runners that deserve to both be starters, and that's what I think of. I think, who plays the first snap, it really doesn't matter. I got a feeling that, they're both going to be in there, and, hopefully an equal amount of time and have an impact, obviously, as runners, and then certainly in the pass protection as well as catching the ball. I've been impressed with, really, they displayed in camp sort of what I knew about them on tape, and they're multi-dimensional backs. And so we're going to try to use them both. And so in my mind, it's a good problem to have.
Last one, Zach.
Hey, Coach, what gives you confidence in Lloyd Cushingberry starting as a rookie, and what challenges do you expect that he'll face, especially early in the season?
Well, I think the challenges you face, it's tough up front. You've got, and especially as a center because you're directing things. What we've seen that tells us that he's ready to start is he's smart, he's instinctive. He's played at a really high level. He's probably played in front of larger crowds. Now, the crowd thing is different this year, certainly, but he's probably played in front of larger crowds in college than he will in some NFL stadiums. So he seems unfazed by, making the calls and doing the right things and directing us. And, he's smart, instinctive player, and he's tough. He does a really good job of, if something's not quite right, at least we're all going the same direction. And so the challenges he faces is this will be his first NFL game, and there's a lot of, things that are going to be running through his mind that we've got to help him kind of segment and put off to the side and just play football like he knows how to. Fortunately, we've got veterans around him, although some of them are young veterans that can help settle him if it comes to that. And, at least in our view, he's ready to play.